Bamboo Peak, Half-Step Peak. As the name implied, the summit boasted only a few square inches on which to stand. A half-step forward led to a majestic cliff, thousands of meters tall. Above, jagged stones jutted skywards and bald trees crept forth. Below, great swaths of mist swirled and haunting wails echoed throughout. It was a treacherous, craggy place where heaven and earth did not meet. Facing this cliff loomed another mountain summit called Qian Qiu Peak. It was no less high nor steep than Bamboo. Its walls also soared for thousands of meters, sheer as if pared by a knife. There seemed no likely foothold, and even its scant greenery was ungrounded in soil, its roots twining about the rocks. The sight was enough to make anyone shudder and regret their attempts to scale that peak. And so, the name Qian Qiu Peak was born. Certain Regret Peak. Between these two peaks yawned a natural chasm. Seen from above, a sea of clouds drifted lazily, concealing the fathoms of its depths, and one could faintly hear the vicious roar of unceasing rapids. The common woodcutters and hunters dared not climb there. Even sentient experts who stood there would find that a sigh stirred within their hearts, lamenting the insignificance of humans before nature. However, below the mist at the foot of the cliff, between the river waters and the mountain walls, wound a stone path paved with uneven rubble. It was long, narrow, and rugged, yet at that moment 2 men walked upon it, one in front and the other behind. As the river raged and galloped, waves turned up from time to time and broke against the wet, slippery rocks. If one lacked just a little prudence while walking, they'd be soaked through by the spray even without falling into the waters. But if they tried to lean away instead, they'd meet that sheer rock face and its sharp, jutting stones. In short, the path was a dilemma liable to leave anyone in a woeful state, and yet these 2 men seemed to stroll leisurely along as though through a courtyard, their movements confident and graceful. "I heard that 20 years ago, Shandu Mountain's perfected Master Qi defeated the Turks' #1 martial artist Hulagu right here on Bamboo Peak, and then he forced him to swear an oath to stay out of the Central Plains for the next 20 years. A pity this disciple was still too young to watch that duel. The battle must have been incomparably splendid." The young man who spoke walked behind the author. Their pace was neither slow nor quick, yet he always kept 3 steps behind. The man in front sauntered in small steps, his demeanor as languid as if he truly trod on level ground. The steps of the young man behind him stretched a little longer. Taken alone, the young man in back also bore an immortal's weightless grace, but seen together it was easy to find the subtle differences between the two. Yin Wuxie gave a derisive laugh.
Qi Fengge was indeed worthy of being called #1 in all the world. Hulagu was a foreign barbarian. He overestimated himself and invited humiliation because of it. He only had himself to blame. Yet, for the sake of upholding a Taoist sect's pure and lofty image, Qi Fengge refused to kill him and chose instead to establish a 20-year covenant. Apart from sowing the seeds of trouble for Shandu Mountain's future, what benefits did he receive?
Yu Xingyan was curious. "Shizun, was Hulagu really that great of a martial artist?"
If I were to fight him right now, I would have no guarantee of victory.
Yu Xingyan was aghast. Of course, he understood just how profound his own master's martial arts were. Hulagu's abilities must have been just as terrifying if Yin Wuxie gave him such an appraisal. Perhaps he'd even rank among the top 3 in the world. Yin Wuxie's tone was indifferent.
Why else would I say that Qi Fengge left endless troubles for his own disciples and future generations? 20 years ago, Hulugu might have been slightly inferior to Tifengge, but in 20 years, such a gap can be closed. And now, Tifengge is dead. Qiandu Mountain will never find a second Tifengge.
Yu Xiangyan released a soft breath. Yes, perfected Master Qi passed away 5 years ago.
Who is the current sect leader of Qiandu Mountain?
A disciple of Tifengge named Qian Qiu. Yin Wuxi had little reaction to the name. He'd met Tifengge only once, and that was 25 years ago. Back then, Qian Qiu had only just been accepted as one of Tifengge's personal disciples. There was no doubt that Qiandu Mountain was called the world's #1 Taoist sect, but in the opinion of Yin Wuxi, who had just emerged from 10 years of seclusion, no one on Qiandu Mountain was worthy of standing as his opponent, other than Tifengge. Unfortunately, Tifengge was dead. Yu Xiangyan saw his master's lack of interest and added, I heard that Hulugu's disciple, Gunye, the current #1 martial artist of the Turks and wise king of the left, is here today at the summit of Bamboo Peak to challenge Qian Qiu. He says he wants to clear the shame from Hulugu's loss. Does Shijun wish to go and watch? Yin Wuxi answered neither yes nor no.
In the 10 or so years I spent in seclusion, what other major events occurred, apart from Tifengge's death?
He asked instead. Yu Xiangyan thought for a moment. Shortly after you entered seclusion, the new emperor of Qi, Gao Wei, ascended to the throne. But he is a man of lustful indulgence and boundless extravagance, so Qi's strength has plummeted since then. There are rumors that Yu Wenyong, the emperor of Zhou, is plotting to attack Qi. Zhou will probably annex the north soon. Over these last 10 years, because of Tifengge's death, the rankings of the world's top 10 martial artists have also changed. Yi Biqian of Junyong Monastery on Qingtong Mountain, Buddhist master Xueting of Zhou, and Ruyan Kehui of Linton Academy are recognized as the top 3 in the world, and they represent exactly the 3 schools of Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. But some also say the Kosa sage of Tuyuhud could be ranked among the top 3. There's also Hulugu. If he's grown stronger over all these years, it's possible that he could compete for the #1 position the next time he enters the Central Plains. After this speech, Yu Xiangyan saw that his master was continuing along their path, and he couldn't help but add, Shijun, today's duel between Kunye and Qian Qiu will surely be another rare and exciting battle. Qian Qiu is a recluse, and he's fought even less since he took over leadership of Xiandu's Violet Palace. He only ranks in the top 10 on account of his master Tifengge's prestigious reputation. If Shijun wishes to see the true extent of Qiandu Mountain's strength, today's battle is not to be missed. I imagine the summit of Yinghui Peak is already packed full with martial experts who've come to watch.
Did you think that I came here today to watch the battle?
Yin Wuxi finally paused in his steps. Yu Xiangyan was a bit flustered. Then, what does Shijun mean to do? He'd entered discipleship beneath Yin Wuxi at only 7 years old. Then, 3 years later, Yin Wuxi had lost a battle to the Grand Master of the demonic sects, Cui Youwong. Injured, Yin Wuxi entered seclusion, a seclusion that lasted a decade. During that time, Yu Xiangyan continued his training according to Yin Wuxi's instructions and also traveled to many places. His progress put him far beyond where he'd been before. He'd entered the ranks of first-class martial artists within the Jianghu long ago. But inevitably, because he hadn't seen his master in 10 years, there was a sense of estrangement and unfamiliarity between them. Moreover, Yan Wuxie's martial expertise had only grown more profound while he was away, and so the awe within Yu Xiangyan's heart had grown deeper along with it. So much so that the usual bold and untrammeled behavior that others saw from him became restrained and tentative in his Shizun's company. Yan Wuxie clasped his hands behind his back.
"I've already seen the battle between Qi Fengge and Hulugu,"
he said, tone indifferent.
"Shen Chao and Kunye are their disciples, and they are still young. No matter how strong they can't surpass the grand spectacle of that year's Ji-Hu match. I brought you here because of the fast-flowing waters and the treacherous terrain, which connects to the energies of the sky and the spirits of the earth. This makes it the most suitable for training and enlightenment. While I was in seclusion, I had no time to look after you. But now that I've left, I cannot leave you to loiter and stagnate at your current level of progress. Before you comprehend the 5th stage of the Fanglin scriptures, you shall stay here."
Yu Xiangyan suddenly felt a bit wounded. Though he had spent these past 10 years traveling here and there, he hadn't dared to neglect his training, not even for a day. Now he was only in his early 20s, but had already attained the Fanglin Scripture's 4th stage. In the Jianghu, he was considered one of the few martial experts of the younger generation, so he had been quite satisfied. But now it seemed his Shizun saw no merit in any of this. As if sensing his disciple's emotions, the corner of Yan Wuxie's mouth tugged up in a mocking smile.
"When I was your age, I had already broken through the 6th stage. What do you have to be proud of? Instead of comparing yourself to those small fry, why not compare yourself to me?"
Although the hair at Yan Wuxie's temples was peppered with white, it didn't detract from his charm. In fact, a shadow of a smile made it even harder for anyone to avert their eyes from his handsome face. His white robe, long and loose, flapped and rustled in the blustering wind, but he remained as stalwart and unmoving as ever. He simply stood there with his hands behind his back, but radiating from him was an invisible aura of all-encompassing disdain, both intimidating and crushing. As Yu Xiangyan stood opposite him, a suffocating pressure engulfed him from the front, forcing him 2 steps back. "Shizun is a heavenly talent. How can this disciple dare to compare himself to you?" he said, reverent and fearful.
"Greet me with the most powerful attack you can think of. I want to see how far you've progressed over the years."
Yu Xiangyan had not been tested in martial arts since he'd left seclusion. The order left him a little hesitant, although somewhat eager as well. But when he saw the flash of impatience on Yan Wuxie's face, his single trace of hesitation vanished. "Then, please forgive this disciple's rudeness." As the words fell from his lips, his body moved as he willed it and his sleeves rose. Moving too swiftly to be seen, he was already in front of Yan Wuxie. Yu Xiangyan raised an arm, his palm striking forth. To a bystander, it would appear there was no force behind this movement. It looked as gentle as if he were plucking flowers on a spring day or whisking away dust on an autumn night. Airy and light, without a wisp of firepower. Only those in the thick of things would feel that palm's might. In a meter-wide radius around them, the grass and trees bowed, the river waters reversed, waves swelled, and foam leapt as massive air currents erupted, and all this power surged toward Yan Wuxie. There were currents capable of suspending rivers and overturning seas, yet when they reached Yan Wuxie, they seemed to be blocked by an invisible barrier. The hurtling current split into 2 and veered off to either side. He still stood in the same spot as before, completely unmoved. Only when Yu Xiangyan's palm was right before his eyes did he indifferently extend a single finger. Only one finger, and no more. and with just this finger, Yu Xingyan's attack was frozen in midair. Yu Xingyan felt the winds from his palm strike suddenly reverse and roar toward him in a countercurrent many times more powerful than his own. Alarmed, he used the current's momentum and hastily retreated. With this one retreat, he reeled back 10 steps. Only after he'd found his footing upon a rock did he finally speak, still a bit shocked and shaky. "This disciple thanks Shizun for his mercy." Yu Xingyan had been quite confident when he used his palm strike. Few people in all the Jianghu could withstand it. And yet, with just one finger, Yan Wuxie forced him to withdraw his palm to protect himself. Fortunately, his Shizun was merely testing his progress and hadn't pressed his advantage. If it had been an enemy... Yu Xingyan broke out in a cold sweat at the thought. He couldn't help it. He didn't dare be so self-assured anymore. Yan Wuxie had achieved his goal. Now that he'd given Yu Xingyan a wake-up call, he didn't bother saying much more.
"Don't waste your superb talents. In a few days I will travel to the Koktur Khaganate. Once you've mastered the 5th stage here, if you have nothing to do, go and find your Shizong. Don't wander about traveling too much."
"Yes," Yu Xingyan said reverently.
"The scenery here is sculpted by nature and is seldom visited,"
said Yan Wuxie.
"I wish to take a tour around, so you need not..."
Before he could finish, a series of noises came from a short distance overhead. The two of them followed the sounds and looked up to see a man plummeting down as if he'd fallen from high above. He hurtled through layer after layer of branches before finally crashing to a stop at the bottom of the cliff. Even Yu Xingyan had to gasp at the muffled thump of his landing. Surely even a Xiantian expert would be hard-pressed to survive a fall from a mountain peak that high. What was more, this man certainly wouldn't have fallen off the cliff for no reason. He must have been seriously injured even before the fall. "Shizun?" Yu Xingyan looked to Yan Wuxie for instructions.
"Go over and take a look,"
he said. The man's Taoist robe was slashed through in many places, probably because it tore against the branches and rock face during his fall. His flesh was a mosaic of overlapping bloodstains and fresh wounds, making it hard to even discern his appearance. He had lost consciousness already, unable to keep a hold of the sword in his hand. When he'd hit the ground, the sword followed suit and landed nearby. The bones all over his body have probably been shattered. Yu Xingyan frowned and inspected him for a while, clicking his tongue in sympathy. Then he went to check his pulse. There, he felt what seemed like a glimmer of life. But even if you could save a man in this state, he probably would be better off dead. Yu Xingyan was from a demonic sect after all. He might have been young, but his kindness was limited. So even though he had a pill of great revival on hand, he had no intention of giving it to this injured man. It was just... "Shizun, today is the date of the duel between Qian Qiu and Kunye. This man fell down from above where the duel is being held. Could he be..." Yan Wuxie walked over. Instead of looking at the man, he picked up the sword. The blade was cold as autumn water and wholly undamaged. As it reflected the river and the mists, subtle ripples seemed to dance across its surface. Near the hilt were 4 small characters, carved there in seal script. Yu Xingyan came over to take a look. "Ah, the Shenhe Tongbei sword! It's the sword of the Shendu Violet Palace's sect leader! This man really is Qian Qiu!" He looked back in disbelief at the grievously injured man, so close to death. Qian Qiu. Qi Fengge's abilities were the best in the world. Qian Qiu was his personal disciple, and he rose to lead Shendu Mountain. How could he lose so completely? Yu Xingyan squatted in front of Qian Qiu and frowned. Could Kunye's martial arts have grown to surpass even his master Hulugu's? If any other person from Xiandu Mountain had fallen, Yan Wuxie wouldn't have given them a second glance. But Qian Qiu, the sect leader, was a special case. He tossed the sword Shenhe Tongbei to Yu Xingyan, then looked at Qian Qiu's unrecognizable countenance for another moment. Finally, an enigmatic smile crept across Yan Wuxie's face.
First, take out the pill of great revival and give it to him.
Hello friends, this is Red, and if you enjoyed that little snippet of Thousand Autumns, please follow the link below to find a full fan-made audiobook. This drive contains all 5 novels of the Thousand Autumns series, as well as the 7-chapter epilogue and 1 extra side story. As a disclaimer, this is a completely unofficial fan-made reading, so the full audiobook cannot be hosted on the public internet. Otherwise, please feel free to download and share these files as you wish, or pass the link along to anyone you feel may enjoy the story. Thank you for checking out my reading, and I hope that you enjoy.